So this is a recording that I probably should have done several months ago. And I don't know why I didn't do it, but the idea honestly just hit me recently. And I say that I should have had the idea because essentially what I'm going to be talking about in this recording is something that I have been doing pretty much for the last 15 years. I've pretty much been doing it for the last 15 years. And again, the idea just hit me to do it for you all. And what I'm talking about is essentially something that I've been doing in my professional life. Because a lot of times what I like to do is to take things that happen in my professional life and I like to bring them to the hobby and vice versa, because I think that that makes it kind of fun for me when I can take these topics and weave them in the comics. I think that's cool. And then occasionally, like I said, I take a comic book thing over to the real world and have a little bit of fun with it. But for the last 15 years or so, at this point in the year, the mid-year point of the year, essentially I do something called a mid-year review. And this is a time in which I, as an employee and as a manager, ask some really tough questions about performance. As an employee, I have to sit down and I have to write out an assessment of my performance based upon goals that I set for myself at the beginning of the year. And I have to be able to write out what I have done to achieve or to be on track to achieve the goal that was set at the beginning of the year that my manager signed off on. And I literally write out, I did this, that, and the other thing to achieve this objective, to further this goal. As a manager of people, I ask my people some really tough questions. What have you done to be on track for achieving this goal? I ask them very, very tough questions. And then I also ask them a lot of questions about me. What can I do to better support you? How can I better help you? How can the organization put you in a better position to be successful? If you're not, right? If you are, cool. What can we do to help you to continue to be successful? These are the conversations that we have at the mid-year point. And the reason that we do that is because we need to ask ourselves some really tough questions. Are we going to achieve the things that we set out to accomplish? There is some data out there that suggests that people in organizations, of course, that set goals are more likely to achieve their goals. And part of the reason for that is because they write the goals out and they articulate what it is that they are trying to accomplish. They track their progress and they make adjustments as necessary in order to achieve those objectives. It makes perfect sense when you think about it, right? So the question is, if it makes sense for business, might it also make sense for us in this hobby? And I honestly think so. Every single year, January, February timeframe, you will see across social media lots of want lists and wish lists that go up. And then in the weeks and months that follow, what you see is people putting up, they'll put up their initial image of 10 books or 15 books or 30 books or whatever it is. And then in the ensuing weeks and months, you'll see those same posts go up and they'll get crossed off. They're crossing them off as they're buying these books. And I think it's perfectly fine to basically say, I want to buy these books this year. I think that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But the question is there a higher purpose to those purchases? Do those purchases roll up to something greater? And it's okay if they don't, but in my mind, I think that the purchases should actually make sense. They will make sense if you have a goal and an objective for your collection, if you have a purpose in mind. And to some degree or another, it really doesn't matter what your purpose is, but you want to have a purpose. You want to have some goals and objectives, things that you want to do. And the reason for that is because if you have those goals and objectives, they essentially serve as guardrails for the purchases that you make. And if you have a goal and objective that is meaningful to you, when you buy books that fit in those parameters, or you do things that fit within those parameters, then it leads to something greater than just the purchase or the activity. It rolls up to something greater that you can say, That is meaningful to me. So you see people do these want lists and they cross them off. But what I have never really seen, and that's part of the reason why I'm doing this, I've never really seen anyone do an assessment at the mid-year point to say, I bought these books and these books have amounted to something greater than just individual purchases. I know that many of you have actually set goals for your collection. And I know that you have because you listen to my recordings and because you all have also told me that I have established goals for my collection which have given me focus. They have given me purpose. They have given me the ability to control FOMO. They've given me the ability to evaluate things that I've wanted to buy against something greater than just that individual purchase. And people have told me this, so I know that you do it. The question is, if you have done it, do an assessment of where you are at this point in the year. Are you on track? Are you behind? Do you need to make some adjustments, some tweaks and modifications so as to be able to finish the year strong? And if you haven't set a goal, that's okay. Keep listening because I'm going to tell you how to set one. But if you set a goal, you need to ask yourself a couple of questions, and we're going to walk through some of that. We're going to walk through some of it. The same way that I do with my employees, this is the question I want you to ask yourself. How do you think things are going so far in this year? That is the first question. In your gut, if you ask yourself that question, you probably know the answer to it. Yes, we've had to make some adjustments to what we wanted to do this year because of Voldemort. We've had to make some modifications because many of you probably wanted to go to some cons and you wanted to find those key books in those dollar bins. You wanted to go hunting, right? You wanted to find those books. You can't do that. Some of you wanted to go to the cons and be the first one there so you can hit up that $5 Silver Age table that someone sets up at the con. You can't do that. You've had to opt in some ways for virtual cons from your house. You've had to send in your books to CGC or CBCS or give them to a facilitator to actually have your books be signed. Those were goals that I'm sure that many of you had. You wanted to meet your favorite celebrities. You wanted to get your signatures. You wanted to get your collectibles and your comic signed. We haven't really had that. And if we did, it wasn't necessarily the same experience. So we've had to make a lot of adjustments. How are those adjustments going for you? If you had a goal, how have the adjustments, the pivots that you've had to make, how have they affected what you set out to accomplish for this year? Ask yourself that. Because again, in your gut, if you take the time to ask yourself whether you're on track, whether you're behind, you know. And again, if you want to look at your list of want list books, you can look at it and see, did you buy the 5 out of the 10 books that you set out to accomplish? There's nothing wrong with looking at that. The problem with that is that it's just a binary thing. Either you did or you did not buy those things. That's it. But if you have a goal, if you have an objective that those purchases ladder back to, then you have something a little bit more tangible to dig into. Am I on track for accomplishing the things that I set out to accomplish this year? Where are you with these goals? Are you ahead? Are you behind? Are the goals still meaningful to you? That's a big one. And if you find that you're ahead, we'll talk about that. If you're behind, we'll talk about that. If the goals are no longer meaningful to you, we can talk about that, and that's actually okay as well. But if you have your goals, pull them out and look at your goals. Take the time to look at each one of the goals and ask yourself, are you on track? Are you behind? Maybe your goal was to get better organized in your collection. Is your collection better organized? Have you made progress? Have you gone out and bought the materials that you needed to organize your collection? If your goal was to rebag and board your collection so as to make it a little bit more presentable, have you done it? Have you bought the bags and boards? And I can tell you it takes a couple of weeks to actually get supplies right now from BCW. I can tell you that for a fact. But have you bought the bags and boards in order to actually accomplish it? Or no? And if you haven't, that's okay. You can play catch up. Was one of your goals to set up your comic book room, to display your comics on the wall? Have you done it? If not, why not? Is it still meaningful to you? Is it something that you need to and want to still do? Maybe you've had some setbacks. That's actually okay if you had some setbacks. But you need to ask yourself, are you on track? Did you want to buy a Grail comic? Did you buy it? Yes or no? If not, is it because you spent money on other things that maybe you should not have spent that money on? Maybe you bought the book. If you did that book lead to the type of happiness that you wanted it to lead to? Maybe your goal was to reduce the size of your collection to get it to a smaller number. I know a lot of people like that decide, you know what, I only want to have 100 books tops in my collection, but I want them to be killer books. Have you made that progress? Are you down to 100 books? Are you making progress to it? Is the goal still meaningful to you? If not, that's okay. You can change it. There's nothing wrong with changing a goal. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it. Maybe your goal was to learn more about Golden Age comics. Maybe your goal was to learn more about original art. Have you made the progress? Have you taken the steps necessary to improve your understanding of Golden Age comics and original art? If not, why not? If so, is your knowledge where you want it to be? And if you were trying to get more knowledge about Golden Age books and original art, for what purpose? Was it to make a purchase? Okay. If it was for that purpose, have you made that purchase? Are you more comfortable and knowledgeable and in a better position so as to make that purchase when the right book or art presents itself? If so, then you are on track, but you have to look at your goals. Hopefully you have them written out. And if you haven't, write them out. Write them out, put them on a piece of paper, put them on a backing board. That way you can refer to them, put it on a whiteboard, do what you need to do in order to keep your goals in front of your mind so that you can continue to kind of execute on some of those things. Maybe at this point in the year, you have crushed your goals. And if you have crushed your goals, I definitely applaud you for that. I definitely applaud you for that. So the next question I would ask you is, are you ready to set another goal? If you've crushed your goal or your goals, whatever it happens to be, have you set another goal? If you haven't, set it. And we'll talk about how to set a goal again here in just a couple of moments. But I would definitely encourage you to set another goal. The other question I would ask you is, did you set the bar high enough? Sometimes we like to set goals for ourselves that we know that we can easily crush. And to some degree or another, there is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing more satisfying than having a list and checking it off, and it be something that's like important, like, you know, not like go buy bags and boards, right? That shouldn't necessarily be a goal, because that's just a minor thing, right? But if you set a goal and it wasn't a big goal, but it was one that you achieved, there's nothing wrong with that. Take the win, pat yourself on the back, and keep crushing it. But set a goal, maybe one that actually challenges you. You guys have heard me on the channel talk about big, hairy, audacious goals, BHAG goals. These are goals that actually have the ability to scare you because they're big. They are goals that you look at and you're like, I don't know if I can actually do that, but I am going to write it down and I'm going to break it down and then I am going to try. One of the magical things that happens with setting stretch goals is that you, with focus, perseverance, sometimes stubbornness, you can tackle that goal. You can take that goal down, and then when you take it down, you look at it and you're like, why was I so afraid of that goal in the first place? I don't understand. And then what happens is you set another goal that is also a big, hairy, audacious goal that also scares you, and then you take that one down and then you do it again. And before you know it, you are making magic. You are doing things that people did not think were possible, and you're doing them because you're asking yourself some really tough questions. You're setting big goals. You are more focused in the things that you are actually doing, and you're making magic happen because you have focus. So many people can't make magic because they don't have focus, because they don't have goals. They don't have goals that are meaningful to them. They don't have the ability to control what it is that they are doing. But if you can harness all of that potential, if you can find a way not to spend a dollar here, a dollar there, but to save those dollars up, those little dollars, those little changes, those little modifications that you make on a daily basis actually add up to something great if you give it enough time. And that's where the magic actually gets made. There is power sometimes in not doing something. There is power that comes from not spending money. There is power that comes from not getting caught up in FOMO and buying that book, but keeping your powder dry. Keeping your powder dry and focusing your efforts on a goal that is meaningful to you, and you take it down and then you celebrate. You appreciate what it is that you've done, the sacrifices that you've made, maybe the things that you've missed out on, because you've had the ability to persevere and to be focused on something that is greater than some temporary gratification. There is magic to be made, my friends, with just a little bit of focus. Now, let's say that you take a hard look at yourself and you look at your goals. You pull them out, you look at your goals, and then you realize that you have not made as much progress on your goals as you intended. Truth of the matter, it's okay. It is okay. If you have goals and you have not yet achieved those goals, it is actually okay, because maybe you set some big goals. Maybe you got off track. Maybe you've been distracted. That's actually okay. You have time to make some adjustments. Maybe what you need to do is delete some goals, change some goals, and ask yourself whether the goals that you've established for yourself are truly meaningful enough. Maybe you haven't made the progress that you wanted to make because the goal's not meaningful enough. And there's nothing wrong with deleting a goal, changing a goal, and changing your focus. There is nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. Course corrections are part of the game. But if you course correct, you need to make sure that when you do that, that you are headed to something that is actually truly meaningful at that point. Because if not, now you're just wasting time. You're just wasting time and flapping in the breeze, right? So if you aren't making the progress that you wanted to make by this point, ask yourself some really tough questions. Why not? Why haven't you made the progress? Make the necessary changes so that you can get yourself back on track. Examine what has held you back and make the adjustments. Maybe you've just been lazy, and that's actually okay. It is actually okay, because here's the great thing. You still have plenty of time. This is still a hobby and not an actual job. So let's put it in context. No one's going to get fired if you don't achieve these things. So let's put it in context. You should still be having fun. No one's going to get fired if you don't achieve these goals. So let's never confuse, how serious or not this actually is, right? I tend to have a little fun with it because I like to bring some of these business concepts over to comics. But at the end of the day, so much of this is about, are you having fun? Are you enjoying yourself? Are you spending your money on things that make you happy? And if not, why not? How can you make yourself happy? Because it's a hobby that should be fun. Yes, there is money involved, and yes, you want to try to have some focus, right? But there's also, sometimes too much pressure and too much stress. And maybe that's a hindrance. And that's actually okay if you want to back away from some of that stuff. That's actually okay. But let's say that you are making the progress that you need. You've made some progress. Maybe you need to make some adjustments. Go ahead and do that, right? But you have to ask yourself, is the goal that I'm still on track for, that I'm still pursuing, is it meaningful to me? Is it enough to sustain me until the end? And if it is, great. If it's not, make the change. By this point, you may also be saying, I don't have a goal. Never set a goal. Or maybe you've crushed your goal and you need a goal, right? Maybe you've made some modifications and deleted some and you're like, hey, I'm going to augment one goal. Let's talk about how you should set a goal. I recommend that people always use something called the STAR format. STAR, STAR format, right? And the way that this breaks down is that the S stands for specific, the T, time bound, the A, actionable, the R, relevant. So your goal has to be specific. Saying that you want a good collection, it's not specific. Saying you want a great collection, not specific. Saying even, I want to learn about original art. That's not exactly as specific maybe as it could be, So you want to take some time to have some specificity in your goal. You want to have some specificity in there. I want to have every Amazing Spider-Man 1 through 441. That's specific. I want to own every book that Michael Turner actually drew. That's a pretty specific goal, right? Because that is actually a fixed number of books, and you can find a list online. You can execute against that. It doesn't really matter exactly what the goal is, but there should be some specificity to it where people and you can wrap your mind around what it is that you're actually trying to accomplish. Once you do that, there has to be a time element, time bound, right? Within the next 3 months, I want to buy the last 50 books that I need to complete my full run of volume 1 of the X-Men series. That is a specific goal that is also time bound. The third element, actionable. I want to, in the next 4 months, learn more about original art from more knowledgeable people in the comic book community, so as to make my first purchase of original art before the end of the year. That's a multi-part, right? There's a couple of time-bound elements in there. It is specific. It is also actionable, so that I may, right? Relevancy. How important is this to you, right? I want to organize my collection in the next 4 months by using CLZ so that it can make it easier for me to find the books that I am looking for in my collection, because I hate a messy collection. To some degree, and maybe not the best goal I've ever written, but it is specific. It was time bound. It is actionable, and it is also relevant. I hate a messy collection, so I want to get my collection better organized by alphabetizing it or organizing it by genre or whatever it happens to be. The point is that you want to take some time to write out your goals in this star format, because it gives a little bit of structure. And so if you have to ask yourself, by what point am I trying to accomplish this thing? Okay, you have a time element. What is this thing that I'm trying to accomplish? Why am I trying to actually accomplish it? And what specifically am I going to do? That is the benefit of the STAR method, because it lays it out there for you. And yes, again, this could be a little overkill. It's actually okay if you decide I only want to do part of it. I don't want to use the R, right? But again, I think that you want to put some parameters around some of the things that you're doing, because you can spend a lot of money in this hobby. You can waste a lot of money in this hobby. And if you have it to waste, that's cool. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people want to enjoy this hobby. And one way to enjoy it is to have focus. Focus, so that when you spend money, you are spending it on things that are actually meaningful to you, that actually bring you happiness, bring you some joy, and that you can look upon a year or two after and still be happy that you actually spent the money on that thing. That is a real indicator of happiness, is if not just if it brings you joy when you first get it, right? It's like a relationship. They're all great right in the beginning, but 3 years, 4 years, 15 years, 29 years, are you still happy? Are you still happy with the purchase? Are you still happy with the decision? Was the investment in time, energy, and effort worthwhile? And sometimes by giving a little bit of forethought to it before you actually go into it, that can actually impact the end result. A lot of people say you should start with the end in mind. Hey, start with the end in mind, so that when you go into it, you can decide, is this a go or no go decision? When my wife and I first got together, we asked ourselves in the dating phase a lot of really tough questions. Is this a go, no go decision? Is this going to work? Can I be with this person long term? If not, I'm going to cut bait and be out, so as to not waste a whole lot of time. We had a lot of those kind of conversations. And I think we are better for it as a result of having those conversations up front. And a lot of people, again, will be listening to this recording, and they will hear that I'm talking about comics. Some people will hear that I'm talking about lots of other things. Regardless of how your mind works and regardless of what you actually hear in this recording, it's all good. My goal and my objective is pretty simple. It is in many ways to entertain and to inform, but it is also to create a little bit of space for you to think a little bit more clearly around the things that you are actually doing. And if I can get you to stop and think for just a couple of moments, I feel like you, me, the hobby will be better off as a result of you taking a few moments to think about the things that you're doing. Because if you do that, then maybe you won't get burned out. Maybe you won't waste your money, and maybe you will want to be part of this hobby and this community long term. That benefits us all. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to this recording. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, I want to encourage you to leave a comment behind so we can mix it up in the comment section. If you truly enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, that's okay too. You want to go ahead and hit that thumbs down button. I'm actually okay with that. But don't be afraid to also say in the comment section why you didn't enjoy it. That's one of the things. It's like, I have no problem with people thumbing down the video, but it doesn't really help me. It doesn't help me to understand why you didn't like it. So if you would ever be so kind so as to leave a comment behind and just say, hey, I gave you a thumbs down, but here's the reason why, I actually find that helpful. And maybe we will agree on why you did it. Maybe we won't. I'm not afraid of a little bit of conflict, and I'm certainly not afraid of a little bit of feedback, because I think that there's some growth that can actually come from conflict and also from negative feedback, because I can use both, right? But I do want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to this recording. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects, or you can send me an email to reggie@regiecollects.com. REGIE is the correct spelling of my name. Take care.